large room, but there's only one microphone. And I'm pretty loud, as you may now picked up by now. And Ryan can go blow for blow with me in terms of volume. Are we okay in the back there? You guys hear okay? Excellent.
What did you say? What?
All right, and the comedians in the room can just go out the doors on the left and the right. So we're going to talk about nurturing a culture of innovation inside a 100-year-old company. So if this is not what you're here to listen to, there's plenty of other good sessions and talks right now as well. My clicker's a little slow. So I'm Andy Brown. I'm the founding office director of FordLabs. My background is in Agile coaching, software engineering, software development. I don't want to give myself too much credit. Not really a very good engineer. I'm in product management. I'm a board member here. Today I'm talking about FordLabs. I took my organizer shirt off, so I don't represent the conference for the purposes of this session. Ryan wanted to make sure that you knew that I was the runner-up in our Dr. Mario tournament. Sorry, Sylvia, third place. I think also, Ryan, you left out that I was runner-up in the pairs ping pong tournament as well. So a bit of a competitive streak. And you can find me on LinkedIn if you'd like to connect.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, and I'm Ryan Kennel. So I now run the FordLabs and have about 20 years of software delivery experience, most of it being at Ford Motor Company. Software engineer by choice, Agile practitioner by necessity. So a lot of pain over the years really got me excited about Agile and some of the stuff that we now do at FordLabs. And I got a participant ribbon in the Dr. Mario tournament.
Not a millennial, but still demanded his participation.
And I don't even think they gave me a participant.
Sorry.
I don't think they gave me a participant ribbon for the ping pong because I'm really bad at that. And there I am on LinkedIn. So cool.
So one of the things that we discovered as we were putting together our slides is this kind of pairing turned out to be something that helped us nurture a culture of innovation. It wasn't one of the things that we were going to talk about, but it's a little bit ironic that like mine is the corporate photo, and I'm not the corporate person at Ford, and Ryan's is like the hipster photo, and Ryan's the corporate person at Ford. But honestly, some of the greatest successes that we've had in establishing FordLabs, and we'll talk about FordLabs in a second, is the fact that Ryan and I have such diverse perspectives and backgrounds in the organization, but we actively paired on many of the activities that we'll talk about today. And that was a big part of what's led to the impact that FordLabs and Ryan and I have been able to have in the organization.
Yeah, no.
And there's like a super delay on my clicker here. All right, there is some responsibility on you. Some of the responsibility on us is to give you something that maybe you can take away or you can learn from. The responsibility on you is to be able to get that thing. So what I want to have you do is just take a couple minutes to yourself, pull out your phone, but we actually want you to put something down. Just take maybe 2 minutes, and what are you trying to accomplish in your current organization? What are your hopes and dreams for the organization, for yourself? You're in an Agile conference, so maybe it's Agile related, I don't know. And then what are some of your barriers for achieving those? So take 2 minutes, and please actually take the time to write something down, because we're going to follow back up on that.
You're allowed to talk. This does not have to be a silent exercise.
Yeah.
Talk to your partner.
Yeah, if you know somebody here and you've got some things that you're working on, collaborate on that. Yeah,
Text my wife.
All right. So hopefully you got something to think about as we talk. Either that or you're just checking your Facebook or Twitter feed, tweeting about the awesome session that you're sitting. That's okay too. So here's the deal. There are no secret formulas. There's no magic wand. There's no sprinkling of holy water. There is nothing that is going to magically make this easy. I see people in this room that I've known for quite a while that have done some interesting things, and it's different and differently challenging everywhere that you go. So don't just go back to your office and say, hey, here's what I heard from Ryan and Andy, and this is what we're going to do now. We've done a lot of learning and failing through this process. You can ask Aaron about that later. He'd be happy to tell you about all the different ways that we've failed. So you will be able to hopefully take something away and do your own learning when you go out from here.
Yeah, I think the other thing is, to your point, like context dependent. Even if you copy everything that we do, probably won't lead to the right outcome, right? So understand why we did what we did and how that applies to you.
Man, it's going to be fun with the clicker the whole time, apparently. So what is FordLabs? So FordLabs is a software delivery organization, so we focus primarily on software. I actually joined Ford to lead the Agile coaching team. So I was coaching Agile across the organization. Aaron's sitting up here in the front row, so I'll probably refer to him a couple times. He actually gets specifically mentioned as part of the presentation too. So Aaron and I were meeting. I was coaching Aaron and helping him decide how to set up his organization. And we were talking about maybe the mixed results people were getting with the way that they were thinking about and implementing Agile. And I'll never forget when Aaron said to me, so, I have a question for you. Can you just coach this stuff, or can you actually do it? That may seem ironic. For me, it was like, well, I want to go work for this guy, right? This is somebody who's going to challenge me. It may seem ironic, but for those of you that have been in and around the Agile industry for a while, you know that is probably a question that has to be asked. Can you coach this stuff, or can you actually do it? And so Aaron and I went looking for, hey, where could we actually do this? And we came up with a place in the organization where some help was needed. And so 4 of us in a large organization like Ford of 10 to 11,000 IT workers alone started working out of the Pivotal Lab Chicago office. Pivotal, apparently this conference is maybe also going to be a commercial for Pivotal because they got mentioned in a keynote as well. They've been a great partner though. But we worked out of the Pivotal Labs Chicago office and started adopting different ways of working in partnership with Pivotal. For me, it was a natural fit because I had worked at organizations that had practiced some of the things that we'll talk about in the past. And so it felt a little bit like home, being far away from home. My wife was not a fan. But that's kind of how we got kicked off. And then we brought it back into Ford and have grown it ever since.
Yeah, and while Andy was doing that experiment, I was right in the middle of corporate IT delivery and doing a great job of delivering using Scrum to deliver exactly what we said we would deliver. But it was always really frustrating because at the end of the day, we still weren't really happy with the software being delivered. So I was meeting all my commitments. Like if someone had a question on Scale Agile Framework, a lot of times they'd be referred to me. But there was kind of this, wow, so we're doing great, but it doesn't feel great, right? And so Aaron heard rumors that there was someone who moonlights as a software engineer, even though he's supposed to be doing PowerPoints and Gantt charts. And so that's when I came into the FordLabs to help grow out our software engineering practices.
Yeah, I may or may not have been the one spreading those rumors for selfish reasons. One of the great things, and maybe another point to make, but not specific to this slide, is network in your organization. One of the benefits that I got in being in an Agile coaching role is I got to touch a lot of different parts of the organization. You may find a way to do that that's different, but that's how I got to know Ryan. And so when we needed some help, especially in the software engineering space, and maybe tying some of my crazy, wild, I don't understand Ford, but these things actually work because I've seen them before, ideas back into the organization, Ryan was the guy to help do that. So find the network in your organization that's going to help you with the kind of changes. that you're trying to implement. So this is really important for us. This is the kind of the foundation. So that's the who and the how, kind of how we got into this and what we're talking about. But this for us is the foundation. So the way that we think about work is we think about work in terms of products. Products have three main components. And those of you, I see lots of Ford faces in the room. If you've seen FordLabs presentations, you've seen this all over the place. Technical feasibility, business viability, and user desirability. You can build it, and the one thing that's really interesting at Ford is people think that their ideas are crazy, but we're not talking about things that maybe technically are really hard to do. They just take time. We just have to put the time in to build the thing. But it's technically feasible. It's business viable, and maybe this is the hardest area for us and an area that we spend a lot of focus on. Can you make or save money off of it, and enough so that it's worth doing? And user desirability. There's a lot of times where we assume that if we build it, they will come. And unfortunately, if they don't, we don't really have that opportunity then for something to be business viable. Because often users, if customers are paying you for something, they kind of vote with their feet. If they're internal customers, they vote in other ways that can make your life really miserable.
Yeah, it's a lot of times in IT, it's like, just push the product out the door, right? Captive audience, they have to use your software, right? So as Ford and other companies now, software is becoming kind of core to the product the physical product that you offer. All of a sudden, they don't have to use it. And by the way, the people that had to use it likely had Excel spreadsheets and macros and were doing that instead of using the product, right? So actually coding something that people want to use is a pretty big deal. You said the business viability, and I agree, but just as much user desirability is something that in a large corporate IT organization maybe gets the short change.
And those components don't necessarily guarantee success, the center of those circles. But that's the sweet spot where your likelihood for success is much higher, is if those things are in balance. You heard Heidi talk this morning in reteaming about applying methods to reteaming. Well, we apply methods for delivery of these things. So for technical feasibility, extreme programming is what we say we apply there. One thing really quick, what I'm not saying is XP it only gets applied to technical feasibility. There are elements of XP that lend themselves to business viability, right? Learning in short cycles. But really, for us, XP, the focus of XP is a solid technical practice. And so that's really for us why it focuses there. But I'm not defining them as exclusionary. Again, please notice that the circles overlap. It's not just a consulting slide. Lean methodology, so think here the scientific method and lean startup. Constantly building, measuring, and learning about what it is that we think that we're going to market with. Of course, human-centered design. So putting the person who is going to be interacting with the product that you're building at the very center of what it is that you're doing, and actively empathizing with their needs, their wants, and their desires. We're not going to give you specifics into those practices. That would be 3 separate session talks in and of themselves. But we highly encourage you to go take a look at those.
Although, if you want to know more about lean methodology, just ask Andy about Eric Ries. No?
Yeah. It's a running joke in the office that I have a crush on Eric Ries. I highly recommend Lean Startup in a startup way. And especially if you're in a large organization, Startup Way talks about implementing Lean Startup in organizational structures, so really useful. And then just briefly, our teams are made up of roles that then represent each of those components and sets of practices. So we have what we call a balanced team of product designers, product managers, and software engineers. It's balanced. It's called a balanced team specifically for 2 reasons. One is we think that we have all the roles necessary within an atomic team unit to get the outcome that we want. The team doesn't necessarily have to go outside in order to accomplish their day-to-day work. And 2, there's no hierarchy in our team rooms. No one person is responsible for the outcome. The entire team is. Why? Because as a person, I said I was a software developer in my background, but that was like when I started, and you can ask Brian, the team pretty quickly said like, can you please stop touching code and do the other things that you're better at? So I bring my product management discipline to bear, but then I'm gonna bring poorly my technical discipline to bear. I need somebody like Ryan to help me with that. In corporations, oftentimes you'll hear managers, supervisors, executives say, I want that person to go to, that single throat to choke, so to speak. We don't have that in our teams. We'll just point to the team. Go talk to them, and they'll want to bring a software engineer, product designer, and product manager into that conversation, and all lend their unique and equally beneficial perspectives to the kinds of questions or challenges that you have.
So how many people in this room are a manager, supervisor, some form of leadership within your organization? Where's that on the slide, Andy? Because I don't see it anywhere on there.
That's awesome. So Ryan and I are both in those roles, and our job is to cultivate an ecosystem within which these teams can be successful. If you see somebody wearing a FordLabs t-shirt, I see at least a couple in here, you feel free to ask them how we're doing. Also, please validate this with members of the team if you meet them. We don't want it to just be things that we talk about. Although we do often set aspiration or goals in the way that we communicate what we're all about. Our role is to kind of cultivate that ecosystem. But I would also tell you there are a lot fewer of us within the FordLabs organizational structure than maybe you would see in something that's a little bit more traditional inside of.
Yeah, and another Agile and Beyond attendee, Adam Brooks, is actually a product manager. He's a supervisor at Ford, but he's really great at product management, and so we try and free up about 75% of his time to be that product manager in the circle there. So this is the important part, right? The leadership is just kind of what do we do to make that team be successful.
So a little bit of background for you and maybe some specific things, but now we want to talk about some key things that we've learned that have been critical in helping us to be successful.
Yeah, so first off, it starts at the top. So this is an org chart somewhere around 2017. So you got our CIO at the time was Marcy Cleavorn. Jeff Lemmer was our IT Chief Operating Officer. Application development was broken down into two. Core versus emerging, right? So the core is all your traditional marketing, product development, manufacturing, and then the emerging was all about mobility and where Ford's going in the future, right? And then under that, under core was Aaron. And then somewhere around down here is Andy and me. Didn't fit on the slide. Ford has big hierarchy, and traditionally the communication is you can only talk to someone one level above you or one level below you. The unique thing here, and I think what was so helpful to us, was the fact that everyone in that org chart all the way up to the top believed in what we were doing in the FordLabs, asked us about how we're doing, made us give them updates on progress. And then when we asked them, they did what we needed for them, right? And I think sometimes you'll hear in Agile presentations about how you just got to get leadership out of the way, right? Well, these people here, they have really difficult jobs, huge global responsibilities, right? And so I think Andy and myself having empathy for that challenge, right? We know when to ask them for help and when to just kind of go do it. Right? And then tell them later what we did.
Yeah, I mean, listen, most of us that work in an organization have hierarchy that is responsible for overseeing the work that gets done. And if we ignore that hierarchy, just outright ignore it, it's not going to go very well. But we need them. Aaron was critical. This is Aaron sitting right down here. I think I already pointed to once. Aaron was critical in being able to get this stuff done because the layers in between were there's potentially many of them. And so it's important to have a relationship with someone who has the ability to influence, especially in an organization as large as ours. And so it doesn't matter what size your organization is, but being able to have the ear of somebody who can influence that organization and the people that do set the direction for the organization. The reality is, while holacracy is a neat thing to read about, most of us don't work in organizations that are structured like that. And the other thing that's great about each of the people here is that they have a rich experience and background at a company like Ford. Most of them, it happens to be at Ford. But just like you and I that are trying to implement change in our organization, where we have perspectives and opinions, they have those same things as well. So Ryan mentioned empathy. Have empathy for those folks. Go and get to know them. This might surprise you, but Aaron and I are not all that different from each other. He just happens to have some seniority and experience.
And he dresses better.
Yeah, he dresses nicer than I do. But when we get to know each other, there's a lot more commonality than we might imagine. And so, kind of not having this, maybe awe and wonder, and maybe being a little bit fearless but respectful, helps to engage at the level at which you can gain an impact. So this is a key enabler for us, is having somebody within the organization that can help set direction and trajectory. Ryan and I constantly walk the balance, Ryan now, I did in the past, walk the balance of, am I going to cross a line where there's a landmine on the other side and this could really cost me? Or am I up against it? How much do I just decide to do myself? And we get to make that judgment call. Sometimes we've been wrong, but pretty typically we've gotten pretty good at saying, hey, Aaron, just so you know, this thing, it's kind of hairy. I'm not really sure what's going to happen next, but this is what we're doing. And allowing him then to give some direction. Okay, wait, stop. Let me get involved, or I'm not worried about it yet. Let me know if you need any help. Having that kind of access is really important in order to be able to do some of this stuff.
Yeah, and also knowing when to take a principled stand versus when to just hack the system a little.
Yeah, I learned a lot about that. A lot of principle, and then transitioned into kind of hack the system a little bit more.
And another thing is, so I joked about how Andy and I are about here on the org chart. There are actually people below us as well. And so one of the things that kind of these leaders reinforced for me is the people that are beneath you in the organization, right? You really need to, the people that are valuable to me are the people that can progress my objectives, and it has nothing to do with their place in the organization chart. In fact, traditional corporate structures are very slow to catch up with who are the most valuable people in your organization. Awesome. Yeah, so another thing we learned, technical practices matter. You have a lot to say on this.
I do. I want to start. Please notice again that I took my Agile and Beyond organizer shirt off. If you are trying to do this as process implementation only, whatever your thing related to Agile is, if you're trying to do it as a planning exercise, as a delivery exercise, and you're doing it absent technical practices, I've done it. I've tried it both ways at different organizations. You're going to have a lot more trouble. Technical practices, for me, are the foundation. When you're talking about software delivery, they're the foundation for having success in the results that we say that we're going to get. So we practice extreme programming, we pair. We don't mandate 100% pairing, but we actively pair. If you walk into the FordLabs office, you will see 2 software engineers, 2 product managers. We would actually like it to be more 2 product managers more often, but sometimes it's only 1. But for the purpose of learning or transition, 2 product managers and 2 product designers for the same reason. Pairing for us is an enabler to make sure that the information about the system is spread across the team. I probably won't go into that too much because I think Heidi talked about it a lot this morning in her talk, the benefits that you get when you pair folks. But again, if you're trying to do this, deliver software products using Agile practices without the technical practices, I can virtually guarantee you that you are going to struggle.
Yeah, and I think kind of another key there is continuous integration, right? Which is a piece of XP, continuous delivery, although I would be lying if I say we continuously deliver. We need to get better at that. But the fact that we're doing small incremental change, test driving it the whole time, and our system tells us immediately if we failed is absolutely key to kind of a 40-hour-a-week job that produces great product results. And all this matters not because we read a book about it, although there is a really good book about it called The Science of DevOps Accelerate. But when we talk about how is your software delivery good, right? It's good because the lead time it takes you to get a feature out the door, smaller amount of time, great. How often do you deploy, right? Mean time to restore, change fail percentage. These are things that you need to understand about your software delivery team. that have nothing to do with, do we use Fibonacci sequencing for user stored points, or kind of let's just standardize all our teams and how they point, right? Or iteration, should it be 1 week or 2 weeks? This is about when you get out of the iteration planning meeting, what your engineers are doing.
Yeah, if you haven't seen this book or picked it up, I highly recommend it.
Yes.
It came out of the State of DevOps survey, and they got really scientific about how they started to survey folks in order to get to data about what leads to performance. And notice, those are all technical delivery measures. And so XP for us was really a key enabler for doing that. Essentially in their study, those were predictors of positive outcomes for organizations.
Do we have anyone that's kind of new in their organization, new in an Agile transformation? Awesome. It's a lot less than in years past, so we got a lot of Ford people here. One of the biggest problems that I had early on with Agile at Ford is I couldn't prove it, right? This book here talks about how you actually measure the impact that your change in delivery practices are having on your organization. We got a lot of, probably people who are Agile project managers or just general project managers, and so we wanted to reinforce that technical practices matter. We probably also have some software engineers in the room. The user matters, right? I don't care how good your code is, how much coverage it has, how much clean it is, right? If the user doesn't want to use it, then it's kind of a waste of time. We talked a little bit about that earlier. So in the FordLabs process, we actually have an upfront discovery and framing process where we are studying the users of our software. We are, in the case of a police responder, going on ride and drives with police officers, right? In the case of a dealer connectivity platform, we are watching dealer service advisors, taking notes, right? All to create the right type of software. And I think we had a pretty good example of that.
That's for our next one, yeah.
That's the next one?
But what's important here is these are the people that are on the team doing this. So there are product managers, product designers, software engineers that go on these and get firsthand experience with the customers of the system.
It's really fun to see software engineers for 4 weeks not be allowed to write code because they're studying their user.
Yeah, getting context for what they're using.
They get a little bit of withdrawal.
Absolutely. And then it's more important to get outcomes than it is to meet milestones. So we had one product where we delivered some software and gave that back to one of our users. And they were like, yeah, this is great, I'll go use it. And then we tracked their activity in the system, and they didn't log in, they didn't look at the data. And there was an opportunity for them to save some money in their operation. And so the next time we got together with them a week later, they're kind of an internal user. So what happened? Oh yeah, I was just busy, I'll go look. And the same pattern repeated itself for 2 to 3 weeks. And so finally we said, maybe this is not the software that we needed to build. And so the team did some research, ran some experiments, and came to a more manual process to test before they started building automated software. Ran that manual process. It involved sending emails to a new set of users. And they immediately saw some results from sending those emails to those users. So had we stopped when we delivered that first set of screens and that first set of capabilities and kind of checked that box, yep, we met our requirements, we hit that milestone, that work is done, and not done some additional research, we never would have gotten to the thing that actually drove the business outcome. So our plans are only as good as getting to those business results.
Yeah, interesting though. We follow a human-centered design process, and we came up with that screen. Product owner told us it was great. Shouldn't there be some formal change request process? But that's the beauty here. We judge ourselves based on the outcomes, not based on project planning. So we were able to very quickly divert attention to that.
So one of the things that we also have to do is we have to constantly educate. Some of this content is actually from slides that we give when people come to FordLabs. So they come, they'll visit, they'll get a tour, and they'll hear a presentation about how we work and what we do differently. We write blog posts on our internal network. We'll take things like these talks. There are others from FordLabs here this week giving talks, and we'll go out into the rest of the organization to give talks. There's one, I think tomorrow, about a hackathon that we ran that was largely supported by FordLabs. in order to be able to help that thing be successful in the rest of the organization. So we, Heidi said it this morning, you got to say it 7 times to get the message across. I would say that depends on the scale of your organization. You may have to say it 70, 700, or 7,000 times. But don't stop saying it, and be really, really invitational. Listen, I've gained a lot from a lot of these principles over the course of my career, and I sincerely believe that others within Ford can gain also. And so we want them to be able to benefit by hearing this stuff.
Yeah, and as an engineer, writing a blog post is very painful. I just want to be coding, right? But you're asking the company to do something that looks really different. It looks odd, and as soon as they see it fail, they're going to want to quash it, right? And so getting out and keep reminding them of that message, why they're doing it, here's the outcomes they achieve, is very valuable. Not only are we educating the external users, but we are educating the people internally at the FordLabs. So there's lunch and learns. There is, on Friday at Ford, we have 4 hours of what we call power-up time, where we work on pet projects or learning assignments, whatnot. So not only are we reinforcing the culture outside of the labs, we're reinforcing it inside the labs.
Yeah, and not to too overly call back to Heidi's presentation, but you'll see cross-team pairing on those Friday afternoons, where people get an opportunity to work together. So meet new teammates, learn new skills, and interact with folks that they don't get to interact with on a day-to-day basis. So it helps with that element as well. It's the pointing thing. So for us, this was a really big deal, protecting the ecosystem. So there are, for those of you that are from Ford, those of you that can imagine that, there are some very key differences with some of the stuff we've talked about in terms of the way that we work, the way that we structure our teams, the way that we think about technology, that are very different. And at one point in time in the genesis of Ford Labs, we found ourselves right in the middle of some more traditional IT emails from Aaron. And these weren't like scolding emails, like, what are you doing over there? They were like, hey, you should just be aware of what's getting talked about observations and feedback that about things that were uncomfortable to the rest of the organization on what we were doing. And we needed to be aware of those things. Those were really important. And so one of our designers actually created this. For those of you that have never been to a public pool or any kind of hotel pool, it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing, so just for the record. But we created this as much for our own team as it was for the people around us. And then we put this all over the shared space. And it's so embraced that we actually have it now where we have our own space. We put it in there as well. So it's just a reminder to us that we are trying to be different, not different for the purpose of being different, but different for the purpose of achieving those outcomes. And it's a reminder for the people around us that might be uncomfortable with this, that this is different for a reason. And hopefully they can just get a little bit of laughter in that discomfort in the difference.
Yeah, and the other thing here is it is really hard to transform your team practices when the practice that I'm feeling comfortable doing, that's my normal inclination, is sitting right next to me here, right? So not only when we transform the people that we brought in our team, but now as we bring on new product into the Ford Labs, we actually request that they come to our office in Ann Arbor because it removes the temptation to revert back to old practices, and you're just constantly reinforcing, it's okay, you're doing the right thing, you're in a safe spot.
And then enjoy our work. So because we pair, because it is so important to kind of constantly engage and get work done, our product managers, designers, and engineers all sit in the same collective area. It's important to have fun while you work. It builds relationships, and it helps you get to know, again, kind of like the Friday afternoons, the people around you. A little bit of friendly competition is good, especially because I love competition. But it's just really important to have fun. Like Heidi said this morning, you spend probably more time with the people that you work with than potentially your own family. And so it makes it a lot easier to do things that are uncomfortable or different for you if you're having fun along the way. When people walk into our office and the first thing that they see is a ping pong table, it kind of lightens the mood a little bit right off the bat.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be just competitive things, although
it does, but it doesn't.
you put a puzzle, just a bunch of puzzle pieces out on a table, and it's amazing to see like 4 people like spending 15 minutes collaboratively building up this puzzle, and 2 weeks later when it's all built up, like high fives all around. So there is that shared sense of togetherness. There's also, when you're doing it cross team, I think Heidi talked about this a little bit. You actually are sharing technical practices. How's your day going, Andy? Oh, it's horrible. I can't get this auth stuff to work. Oh, well, we actually use this open source on this other team here, right? And all of a sudden, you're accidentally solving other teams' problems.
Yeah. What has this gotten? What outcomes have we gotten? I think we're like right up against time, maybe a few more minutes left. And then what's next for FordLabs? Just so it gives you an idea of kind of what we've done with this stuff. The first thing is that first product that we started on, we had some different ideas, and it's gone through kind of its routes and trajectories. Was recently announced as a new market opportunity for Ford. This is a public announcement, so I'm not sharing anything that's secret. For our non-emergency medical transportation. So that product is now helping people who can't transport themselves get to their doctor's appointments. And if you read some of the statistics in these articles, we are doing it far better than the existing players in the space have been doing it to date. So awesome to see us have a positive impact in that way.
Yeah. We have moved out of Dearborn into Ann Arbor. We have a purpose-built space. That was fun. But we've created this environment where when people come in, the first thing we hear and the last thing we hear is, I can't believe this is Ford, right? And one of the things we say about our hiring process, our goal in the hiring process is whether we extend that person an offer or not, their goal is to work for us at FordLabs. And I think we achieved that for the most part.
We seem to be doing okay.
And then you talked about how you're the former office director, so I think that's a good story to share as well.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't just about IT delivery. If you're not applying Agile and lean thinking to, are we building the right thing? Are we entering the market with something that we're running a business. We have to make or save money. That kind of thinking needs to be applied up front. And so now, and it's not just me, even our teams, when they go and engage on a new product, we ask them, we consult on, is this a place that we even want to play? And how can we sense and learn about that using the methods that we're familiar with for delivering software, so that when that outcome comes, it's because we were working on the right stuff. And then, along the journey, I think I'll speak for you, but I think Aaron was first introduced to Agile in an in-depth way when we started meeting. And now the rest of the organization is undergoing some of the things that we were influenced by in the forming of FordLab. Other things as well, so it's not all FordLabs, but we are kind of an outpost, a leading outpost for where the rest of the organization is going. So it's great to see that these kinds of things are now influencing the larger Ford IT organization.
Cool. So what's next? Won't dwell on it too much, but good feedback from leadership involved in IT at Ford, where they actually want to make this be a consistent model for a global delivery capability. So starting with the UK and India, but also talks of Shanghai, talks of maybe Palo Alto, and it'd be really cool if we could get some place in Dearborn or Detroit where Ford is centered. We invest 10% of our time in developing tools that help our teams be more productive. As we find tools that are helpful to us, we intersource that to the rest of the company to use it as well. And if we find something that works for the community outside of Ford, our goal is to open source, which if you said that a few years ago at Ford, like, head would explode, right? But probably in the next month or two, we'll have our first open source offering, and for a bunch of engineers who have been doing open source, using open source their whole life, being able to actually give something back is huge. Final thing, our two main missions right now. One is to help our traditional IT organization think about their software like products to transform. And then for our new ideas, Edison, which is kind of Ford's announced effort to bring electric vehicles to the masses, helping products without software delivery teams get those products out to market quickly and get the right product out to market.
So we were going to give this to you as an assignment, but we are out of time. Or we were going to do this, as an activity, but we're out of time. So we're going to give this to you as an assignment. So at the beginning, we asked you to write down a couple things. What I want you to think about, what we want you to think about as you go out from here is what could you try and learn from in your organization that might help you break down that barrier. And what I would encourage you to do is to share that thing that you think that you could try with someone else and tell them when they can follow up with you to see if you've tried it. One of the things that we're really good at conferences like this is getting really inspired, and then kind of 2 weeks later you come back down off the high because you didn't actually give yourself any takeaways or action items. So if you want me to be that person that follows up with you, I'd be happy to do that, Ryan, as well, so come see us. And then if you have any questions, just come up front and talk with us. So thanks a lot for attending our session.